Hi there, it's me again. It's like 5 minutes later. I figured, you know what, why stop today? Let's add a little bit more as I walk through the woods. Isn't it a beautiful day? Thank God I got my bug spray on. So I want to help others. If you suffer from anxiety, depression, I self-diagnosed myself as bipolar. If you ever read my book, it goes into detail about that. But low self-esteem my whole life. And I'm just going to describe how I ended up there, which I kind of known. My whole childhood was taking notes, looking at my parents' behavior and saying, okay, that's one more thing I will never do to my children, because something just didn't feel right about the way I was treated. But when you're treated poorly over time as a child, you internalize that you're the one that's bad. You're the one that's wrong. So even though I wrote the book 10 years ago, I'm still learning more and more about myself. I still am learning that, yeah, my childhood was difficult. My parents weren't, exactly loving and nurturing like I needed them to be to thrive. But in all actuality, they were quite narcissistic, and it seems to be becoming quite an epidemic. They're all around us. So I'll get into that. I'm going to get into narcissism quite a bit because it really affected my life and still does. So let me talk about my childhood a little bit. I was raised with my mother, father, and my older sister down in Maryland for a little while, for 9 years. Dad was never home. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. But on paper, it looked really good. We had a sailboat. We'd go sailing in the Chesapeake Bay every weekend, and on paper, everything looked great. However, no one really ever cared about what I thought, what I felt. I didn't notice that I started talking to God a lot because no one else was there to really talk to me. So 9 years later, my parents divorced. My mother moved my sister and I up to Connecticut. My dad took off back to Australia, and I saw him once a year since. He always made it clear, well, at least my mother reiterated, that he always wanted boys, and unfortunately he got 2 girls. So we were kind of the oops family, and I was okay with accepting that. Sorry, this man in the world wanted a different type of woman, and he wanted 2 boys, and he got my mother and some girls. So he's gonna start over and try again, which he did. He accomplished that, marrying a very successful woman in Australia and having his boys. So, and from that point on, my mother, my sister, and I were roommates, pretty much. So I grew up at the age of 10 and starting to really have to rely on myself because my mother decided to, have a life after raising 2 kids for 10 years. She wanted to be single and have fun, and I don't fault her for that. I did it all through my 20s and 30s. I just didn't have 2 kids that I needed to take care of. So my sister and I were left to pretty much raise ourselves, and my mother was like a friend and a roommate. And that's probably where the hardest part of my life began. Going into adolescence with no parental support, nobody telling you no one there to navigate your way, and all of a sudden now you're being treated like crap by your friends and no one to talk to about it. So Dad was busy with his new family. Mom wasn't much up on parenting, the parenting aspects of being a mother. And I don't want to go act like I'm not a victim, and I don't want to act like, oh, my mom's so bad, my dad's so bad. I'm just going to be as factual as I can be, because I will never take the role of victim. Well, I did before, because they wouldn't own the fact that they made me feel like crap half of my life. But again, I realized narcissists, half the time, they don't even know the damage that they're doing. So by the time I was in the 7th grade, I wanted to kill myself because I just felt alone, and my sister was turning out to be exactly like my mother, and I ended up being the scapegoat of their feelings, which they did not like to have. So they would blame me, take it out on me, and one day I wrote on my dry erase board, "I don't want to live anymore." And my mother's response to that, when she saw it, was to yell at me, "Don't write shit like that. What are you doing? Don't ever do that again." Bam, and then closed my door and left. I'm like, well, that wasn't very effective cry for help, was it? Okay, so I learned to stuff my feelings, and there they went. So I wasn't allowed to have anger, I wasn't allowed to have sadness, I wasn't allowed to feel anything because it made my mother uncomfortable. And I learned that very early on. High school was the worst for me. I was an overthinker, I was very shy. And I think I was a little bit more mature than those around me because I really didn't understand the mentality of how girls would treat each other. So it was a lonely time for me. And I wasn't really a big fan of living in such a small town. So as soon as I could, I got out. I quit my first college in Massachusetts after 1 semester and moved out to be with Dad. That's a whole other story in itself. He didn't want me to move out there. After begging me for many years, come on out, live in California with me and my wife, they finally had a little boy of their own, and no place for me. That would be raining on their parade. So I pushed my way out, said nowhere else to go, moved in with them, and within a year they packed up and moved to Australia because they didn't want to be around me because I talked my sister into moving out there too. And now they have 2 crazy teenagers that never really had discipline after the age of 9, flailing about, drinking and partying and camping on their couch. So they packed up and left. Abandonment number 2. All right, bye. So my sister and I both didn't see a sober day for a whole year. I drank. I was too afraid to try drugs. She turned to drugs. She turned to the speed thing. After 2 DUIs and smashing her face and landing in the hospital with no recollection of how she got there, she moved back to the East Coast, and I stayed out in California all by myself. And that's where I stayed for 20 years by myself. And I never understood the power of lack of a support system. Support system, what's that? I don't know, I didn't learn it until I was 35 and in grad school. But I was always getting sick for some reason. I was working out, I was putting myself through school, I was dancing a couple nights a week for socialization, yet I kept getting sick and I didn't know why. But I didn't have any access to my feelings. So I called my mom, which I did every day, not getting much back in the conversation, but I still did it because it's all I had. And I said, I got laryngitis. And I couldn't speak for 3 days, so I'm whispering into the phone going, "Mom, oh my God, I can't even talk. What is wrong with me?" Whispering. And she says to me, "Boy, you should get sick a lot. For someone that eats so well and stays so healthy and goes to the gym as much as you do, did you ever think about getting an AIDS test?" Thanks, Mom. Way to be there for me. So now I'm dying of AIDS. No, I was not. It's called depression. And when you can't have access to your feelings, your body will react negatively. If you can't get those feelings out, your immune system is suppressed. So you're more prone to getting sick. Anyway, after many years of my 20s trying to be an actor with no access to my feelings, how do you act out feelings you don't even have access to? I never gave myself permission to be angry. And I wasn't necessarily sad because I wasn't allowed to be that. So I jumped into a nice big eating disorder. Why not? Can't control anything else. might as well obsess about food. So I did that for about a year. Tried bulimia, tried not eating, gained 20 pounds. I failed at that. So anyway, thank God that didn't stick. I ended up getting in a pretty bad relationship, but the one thing that came out of this relationship was the fact that he turned me on to seeing a therapist. Therapy? What? Only crazy people go to a therapist. I used to judge people when I found out that they had a therapist. Anyway, so I go to my therapist. Oh, what a lifesaver this woman was. Feelings? What is that? I suppress them? What are you talking about? So she opened Pandora's box. After one music session that she gave me to try to chip away at that wall of not having access to my feelings, one music session, if you want to Google what that is, I was catatonic and I couldn't speak for a whole evening because all of a sudden she unlocked the box of my feelings that were suppressed and stuffed away for so long. And then every week after that, we would do music sessions together and I would bawl my eyes out. Woo-wee! Am I ever gonna stop crying? Jesus Christ. She goes, no, eventually you won't have anything to cry about. I couldn't even believe that that was possible. I was crying so much. Oh my God. So that's where I was, full of all these feelings now. And I was smart enough to know where they came from. I knew my mother was never really there for me emotionally. I knew my father abandoned me twice and didn't make me feel like I was ever part of his new family with his boys. My sister had zero ability to access her feelings, and she had a lot of anger she would express at me. She continues to this day to treat me like we're both 12 still. So here I am outside of a relationship that ends finally by myself, crying for help. Someone just talked to me. I think I'm pretty upset about the fact that Dad abandoned me a couple times. I've got zero self-esteem. I feel like shit about myself. I can't find a boyfriend to treat me well. I can't stay in school. It took me 10 years to get my bachelor's degree because I was doing it by myself out in California and I self-medicated with alcohol. So I would drop out every other semester. So that was my life. But I didn't notice along the way the cool stuff that I did. The stuff that made me who I am. I just did me without noticing, in hindsight, the cool stuff that I did. People would compliment me all the time. Oh my gosh, you're so athletic. I was doing gymnastics well into my 30s. My best friend taught me how to surf. I was on my bike doing 15 miles on average because I loved being outside. I loved being athletic. I was funny. I could make people laugh. I was kind. And I was lonely and depressed. And every time I drank, I just wanted the pain to go away. So I wanted to die. And I didn't really understand why until one chunk of time, right before I wrote my book. I went to work because my father and I were fighting, and he wrote me off. He wrote my sister and I a letter of, I don't want to do this anymore, you guys are a handful, and so I am no longer your father. I laughed about it because I knew it wouldn't last. And so he was done with me. And the guy I was infatuated with ghosted me, not sure why. And so I was digging through the trenches of my hell in counseling, feeling very raw, walking through life like a vulnerable peach that someone could just brush up against and I'd be bruised. And I went to work one day after my dad wrote me off, essentially, and my boss said, hey, you ready to take that big table today? Because here I am, 35, and I'm still waiting tables because now I've gone back to school again. And I literally looked at him like I thought I looked like I was gonna cry, but apparently he didn't like that look on my face. So he started screaming at me, and I broke down in tears, left the restaurant, never went back. So I quit my job. I couldn't do my internship through grad school anymore, so I quit that. Luckily, I already had the degree, but I was committed to a internship for another year, but I quit. I quit everything. For the first time in my life since I was 15 years old, I had no job. And I had no way of, I don't know. I had to do it though. So I went home and I prayed a lot and cried a lot. And for the next month, I sat a lot and journaled a lot. It was like a month in isolation, pretty much. I didn't do anything but write in my journal, spend as little money as possible, and tried to pray for an answer. And you know what? The answer came, which I wrote in my book. My parents, through their behavior and the way they treated me, taught me that I wasn't lovable and I didn't deserve to have a man to love me. And I didn't have a whole lot of value. And again, I'm not playing victim. They didn't do it on purpose. They were just doing the best they could, because I'm sure their parents made them feel that way as well, and they just passed it on. Because when you don't have awareness, you're on autopilot and you just do what was done to you. I wasn't blessed with denial or lack of awareness. I've been hyper aware a little too long. So I journaled, I prayed, and I decided to write a poem, because I wrote this email and I was crying for help. Please, someone listen to me. I'm in so much pain and I just need to tell my story and have someone understand what I'm feeling. And they all were like, oh my God, get over it. Just go for a bike ride. Don't sweat the small stuff. I was cliched to death, and no one could hear my cries for help, so I decided to write a poem, and I sent it to everyone I know about the pain I was feeling. And you know, the weirdest thing is they all wrote back. Are you okay? I'm like, what? I have been screaming for months and months and years for someone to just hear my cries for help. And I guess the only way they heard is if I put it in a poem. So that's what I did for a whole month. Everything I felt from my childhood all the way to 35 years old, I wrote in a poem. And I posted it on Facebook. My raw, vulnerable self. And I got the most amazing feedback from people from all over my life that I'm now Facebook friends with. Oh, I got something in my eye. So it healed me. I was finally heard. So is that ultimately what we all need as human beings? Is to just be heard? That's part of it, that's for sure. Those poems that I posted and got all kinds of warmth and kind regards and sincere responses. It was just amazing. And then I prayed a lot and I journaled a lot. So I didn't have access to anything but what was really supportive. And when I asked for help from up above, I took the power away from my parents to tell me who I am. And I asked God who I am. Who am I? And on this little journey for 1 month, I just started going, well, let me write down who I know I am. From a little age, I've been an overthinker and I've been athletic, and I started writing all these cool things that I was like, maybe that's why people compliment me. Then I couldn't take in these compliments. So I decided to take in all the compliments. So I wrote them down, every compliment, every little thing that I wanted to now believe about myself. I wrote it on a Post-it note, slapped it on my mirror, and I said, this is my new truth. I am going to retrain my brain. Because you know what? Every human being, every little precious baby that comes into the world is equally lovable. And I saw the big picture. Yeah, we're all created in the likeness of God. So if God created all of us, what if my little baby cute self was dropped off in a warm, loving, nurturing environment with two people that valued me and told me how amazing I am and said, you can do whatever you want and you're smart and you're capable and a wonderful human being. What if someone told me that all my life? That's it? That's why I turned out the way that I did? Because my parents didn't have the tools to tell me my worth, so I took the power away from the two people that I ended up in their lives. And so I said, well, how would I have turned out if I heard the right things? What did I need to know? What did I need to hear growing up? Why don't I just do it for myself now? Maybe I'll hold my inner child that's crying for a hug, that says I'm lonely and my friends are being mean to me, and why is my best friend yelling at me all the time? Oh, she's just jealous. That's what my mother used to say. I'm like, what? Can you elaborate on that? Because I don't really know what that means. So I would visualize myself at the age of 7, and I would visualize me picking myself up as the adult that I am today and saying to her, I'll take care of you. You don't have to be sad anymore because I got your back and I will take care of you now. And the tears would stream down my face when I would visualize that, because I don't think I ever heard those words. And that was the beginning of healing my soul, is when I took the power away from my parents and I gave it to God and I said, who am I? So I wrote down all the positive qualities that I knew that I was. And then I thought about the other qualities that I wanted to be. And I wrote them down too, as if I already am them. And I claimed them as my new self. And you know what? After 30 days of having Post-its up on my mirror of my new version of me and giving myself a positive affirmation every day I passed the bathroom mirror, I went back to look at the Post-it notes of things that I wanted to be. And I was like, yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, I'm totally that. Yeah, I'm that. Oh my God, one of my Post-it notes said, I love my flaws, because I was obsessing over them too much. I took that Post-it note down and I looked at it and I go, what were my flaws again? I couldn't remember. Power of the Post-it, people. Power of the written word, power of your intention, power of positive affirmation to replace your negative self-talk with positive self-talk. Talk about transformation. Oh my God. I was high on life. Whoo-wee. I think that's when my bipolar really kicked in. Because before that I had depression, and then I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so amazing. So I tapped into my potential. And we all have it. So that's how you get it. And that's where I am today. So, of course, I'm not completely whole. I mean, come on, we're human beings. We're so flawed. I'll never be done learning, growing, and healing. But I learned a lot about what we deserve just for being human. So I wrote a book about it. So what I want to do now is refer to my book and go through every little thing that I learned on my journey that every human being deserves to believe about themselves. So that's where I'm going to go next. So that you can empower yourself too and know what you deserve just for being a human being on this planet. That's it. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I enjoy talking about this stuff. I'm very passionate about, I just want to help others, feel good about themselves too. So come on back if you want to hear the rest. And have a great day. Okay, bye.